Hey everyone, welcome back to Living on the Verge. Here we are, another day, and I'm grateful for it. I hope you are too. But I've been sitting with a lot of things this week, not in a dramatic way, just in a quieter, more observant way. I've been in the middle of redoing my closet. For those of you who have listened regularly, then you know that. And what started off as a really practical project turned into something a lot more reflective than I expected. I want to say this up front, okay? I don't have some grand lesson, some system to sell you. I'm not here for that today. I'm not here to tell anyone how to live or what to buy or what to purge. I don't have credentials for any of this kind of stuff. What I have is lived experience. And lately, I've been paying closer attention to it and letting it sort of serve as a barometer. So today's episode is less about fashion or organization and more about what excess really represents, what we're afraid of letting go, and how our priorities quietly shift as we get older, often without us formally deciding that they would. So I've been sorting through clothes I've owned for years. Some I wear constantly, some I barely touch. And what surprised me wasn't that I had duplicates. In one case, I had 5 dresses of the same exact style in 5 different patterns. It wasn't aspirational pieces or things that no longer fit in my life. We talked about that in the last podcast. That part's normal. What surprised me was the feeling that came up when I thought about letting certain things go. There's this moment where you think, what if I need that? What if there's an event or a version of me or a future scenario where that exact thing would be perfect? Haven't you ever gone through that? You're like, yeah, well, I haven't worn this in 4.5 years, but I did wear it to that one Irish Mexican wedding. And you never know if there's going to be another Irish Mexican wedding down the road. So we might want to hold on to this. I'm joking, but you know what I mean. When I imagine opening my closet one day and realizing that that perfect item is gone, I feel a sense of panic. Not huge, not dramatic, but very real. And it made me stop and ask myself, what is this panic actually about? What the heck is really going on here? Because it's not about style. It's not about looking good. It's not about having the perfect outfit for the Irish Mexican wedding. And it's definitely not about Instagram. I think for me, I figured out that it's about safety. At some point, my closet stopped being just clothes and started being kind of an insurance policy. Proof that I'm prepared, proof that I have options. In some ways, proof that I've arrived. And proof that I won't be caught without what I need or without who I might need to be. Holding on to things for me became a way to avoid the discomfort of that moment of uncertainty. And so once I saw that, like the whole idea of excess kind of shifted for me. And I remember the moment, I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, and I said we'd come back to it. I was walking by the loft where I had all of the excess clothing staged for what was going to be, part E, F, or G of my 2-part plan, LOL, to redo the closet. And I saw that there were just piles and piles. And that's when I noticed that I had 5 of that same style of dress because they were all laying next to one another in the pile. And I just realized, my gosh, this is an exercise in excess. And I didn't beat myself up and I didn't, sit and dwell on it. And I didn't try to fix it or change it, but I just made a note of it. And from that moment forward, when I went back to my project, I started to look at it a little bit differently because that moment of realization was still at the back of my mind. And so everything that I touched, I thought, is this necessary? Is this practical? Or is this excess? And then I started making decisions from there. And I'll tell you what, it was very freeing. It was very easy to recognize what things I was just being excessive about and what things I actually maybe should save in case there was, an occasion that I would use it for. But not everything fit into that category. Most of the things fit into the category of this could probably count as excess. So I'm sitting here having this aha moment, and the realization itself made me wonder, not just about me, about all of us, what are we actually trying to achieve when we keep acquiring? What is it? Because I don't think most people are buying things just to buy them. I think in some sense, we're buying a sense of optionality. The feeling of, I could buy this. Reassurance, maybe, that we're still in motion, right? We're still changing. We're still becoming. And also, we're still prepared. We're still ready for anything. When I look back, I can see that version of myself I was buying my way toward wasn't shallow. Oh, she was ambitious. Yes, but also uncertain and even insecure at times. Disillusioned in a way that I didn't even have the words for yet. Stuff filled the gaps that I didn't yet know how to name. And here I thought I was so cognizant of how I maneuvered my way through life. But what I want now feels different. What I want now feels calm, security, being okay with where I am, not because everything is resolved, not because everything is pretty and perfect, but because I trust myself way more than I used to. I care less about how things look to other people and more about how my life actually functions. Function over aesthetics, peace over applause. It's brilliant. It's life-changing. It is like a huge exhale. Honest to goodness. And one of the clearest realizations I've had lately is this. I don't want my value to feel tied to what I can acquire anymore. Not what I can buy, not what I can accumulate, not even what I can visibly achieve. And this has spilled into how I think about friendships. I've been thinking a lot about how people actually need very simple things from their friends. We need reassurance. We need honesty. We need presence. But how rarely do we actually say that directly to our friends? Instead, we hint or we self-abandon to stay easy, right? We don't want to be a difficult friend, don't want to be that friend that requires too much maintenance. So we pull back quietly and we call it being independent. I don't think, for the most part, it's because we're being dramatic. I think asking directly feels risky. It's scary. It feels like we might be asking for too much. But the clarity might actually be kinder than accumulation of stuff, of resentment, of unspoken expectations. I don't have the answers here, and I honestly, I'm just noticing these things. But I do want to share a little story with you because this played out in my real life after having these, realizations in these moments about, I just want to say the very simple things. I want to identify with the people that I care about, the very simple things that they need from me. What are those things? And this way, there's no confusion as to whether or not I can provide them. And also, there's no confusion as to what is expected of me. And I can make an honest assessment as to what that means in my everyday life. And, we've talked a lot in the last month or so about just cleaning up the drama, clearing up the noise, and being more intentional. And so for me, that meant simplifying and decluttering and finding that alignment, right? We remember that's my word of the year. And so it seemed to me that it wasn't enough to have these ideas and these thoughts and these notions. I wanted to exercise them in my own life and put them to the test. So last week I was talking to my friend on the phone, and we knew we were going to get together and see each other soon. But I kind of mentioned what, I was thinking about, and we were talking about the podcast for a little bit. And this notion of identifying what is expected in a friendship kind of came to pass. And I thought, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to say what I've been thinking. And I said, one of the things that I think would be really cool to do is for us to sit down and identify our expectations of this friendship, because I love you. I think we have a really good time together, but I think that it's important for us to know about it. And she said, oh, I think that's a good idea too. I value your friendship as well. Let's talk about it when we get together next week. And so we had that conversation. She brought it up and she said, remember you were talking about like the expectations in friendships. And she said, here's the thing. I don't have a lot of expectations. I am very busy. And so therefore, the idea of talking 3 to 4 times a week to someone seems like a big responsibility. And I don't know that that's something I would want. But, certainly once a week, twice a week is something that I look forward to and I enjoy, and we get caught up. And bear in mind, I'm paraphrasing all of this, but that's essentially what she said. And then she said, I think that I am a really, really, truly good friend. I am that friend who considers myself the backup singer. I just stand in the background and do my job. And when you need me, I'm there. And I said, that's true. You've shown that to me in real life. And I do believe that. And then we went on and we had a conversation about some other things, but then I said, well, let me tell you how I feel about it. And I kind of reiterated, I agree. It is a lot to expect a friend to talk a lot of times a week. That's not something that I need or require or expect from my friendships either. But it is nice to feel connected. And it is nice if you do talk to your friend that one time a week and you could tell that they're having a rough week, that you check on them the next morning, even if it's just a short text. That's friendship. That's honesty. That's presence. That's being a real friend and checking in. And I said, and sometimes for me, I am not the kind of person who asks for anything, but it's a wonderful feeling to know that you have someone in the world that you can turn to no matter what it is that you need. And I made the silly joke of, I've always wanted a friend that would hold my hair when I was throwing up. Well, obviously, I'm not at that stage in life anymore, but everybody wants that girlfriend that they can just be real and raw with and honest with and not have to worry about the pretense. And I don't necessarily require the need to exercise the option, but the idea of knowing that if I have one drink too many in wine country one day, I have a friend down the street that will come and get me, that means a lot to me. Not that I would do that. I'd probably more likely take an Uber home and then take an Uber back the next day to get my car or something like that, because I find that I struggle to ask and reach out to people, which is a me problem, not a friendship problem. But all of this to say that it was so refreshing to know that, what we expect from one another isn't that much. We shared a few moments of, I like when you do this, and when you do this, it kind of weirds me out a little bit. And, those kinds of things. And that doesn't need to be a part of this podcast. But what rang true to me was the organic nature of the conversation. There were a few things that I realized were vast differences in our expectations, but for the most part, were incredibly aligned. And the one takeaway I had was that having that conversation made us both more aware of what each other needed. And it meant a lot to me that after we got done with book club later on in the evening, everybody, scattered for the evening. We were all done and I had to go to the restroom before I drove home. And when I got out to the parking lot, my friend was sitting there and she said, I felt bad. I didn't want to leave until I made sure that you got to your car okay. I cannot tell you how much that meant to me. Thank you. I want to shift gears a little bit now, and I want to spend some time on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City reunion. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but because it felt unusually revealing, even by reunion standards, first of all, Andy Cohen walked off the set. That has never happened before. And to me, that alone says something about how unresolved and volatile the dynamics were with this cast. This group of, quote, friends, not so bueno people. Then there was Meredith accusing Brittany of supporting an anti-Semite, which A, I hadn't heard about, and B, is not a casual accusation. That's not shade. That's not banter. That's character level confrontation. Period. And what struck me wasn't just the accusation itself, but how fractured the room became around it. I mean, the dynamics in the entire room changed. Then there's Mary. Oh, Mary, Mary, Mary. Lover or hater, Mary showed up with what felt like a very clear agenda to say exactly what she sees, exactly how she sees it, and to hold her castmates accountable with no filter whatsoever. She wasn't trying to be liked. She wasn't trying to smooth things over. She wasn't performing reconciliation. She was saying, this is what I see, and I need you to all see it too. And we also watched what felt like a real breakup between Heather and Meredith. Meredith just kind of kept going back, and Heather, once activated, is really hard to deactivate. And it was all capped off by Heather's declaration, buckle up, Meredith. It's not going to be a fun ride. That did not feel like reunion banter. That felt like a warning. I think there is much more to come, and that moment in the reunion is going to change the trajectory of next season of Salt Lake City. And then there's the scroll. Was it a prop flop? Or was it another example of how Lisa rarely gets held accountable? Because the group gets distracted by her theatrics and by the double speak instead of actual substance. To me, the reunion was a case study in what happens when accountability is inconsistent, when truth is selectively enforced, when needs go unnamed and come out sideways, loud, emotionally, and destructively. It was chaotic, but it was also very human. And we have one more episode of the reunion, and then we're done with Salt Lake City. And I must say, in my opinion, it has been a phenomenal season filled with not just content and levity, some moments overproduced in my opinion, but also, like I just said, some real life lessons if you can read between the line. Who knew that the housewives would provide insight? Okay. On a lighter note, I want to start doing something more intentionally on the podcast. Quick, honest winery rundowns. Not necessarily reviews, although I will more than likely tell you what my favorite was at each winery. But because I know I have listeners who love wine and I'd love to build a little Temecula wine community here, I thought that I'll do a little rundown. I told you before that Tuesday Wine Club is making its way through Temecula wine country this year in 2026, and I'm going to be telling you all about it. So I might as well give you a little bit of an education and give you some information about each of these as I go through them, right? So here goes. Last time we were out, I told you we went to Robert Renzoni Winery, and that is on Di Portola, in the Di Portola Trail. But I didn't tell you what we, tasted and how the day went. First of all, it was a really fun day. It's a stand-up tasting, and you walk in, and immediately you're given this little tray with little crackers, I guess you could call them, in, I don't know, long bullet shapes is probably the best way I could describe them, and a little bit of marinara sauce to dip them in. And then you're given your glass and, of course, water if you'd like it. And then you are given the menu, and you have a total of 6 tastings, and one of them is a different colored chip because it allows you to choose one of their library wines or one of their Reserva wines. Anyhow, here's what I tasted. We got really distracted because there was a group standing right to the left of us, and they were having a great time, and everything they tasted, the guy would order a bottle of wine. So my friend, being who my friend is, eventually introduced herself, or somehow they got to chatting. And next thing you know, we are making introductions, and we meet our new friend, Peter. Peter is a fabulous friend that we met at the winery, who was there with his sister. Talked a little bit about it in the last podcast. And so as a result, we got distracted, and where I would normally take better notes, I was just having a really good time. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is that I was living in the moment, right? So what I tried, the Prosecco, the 2021 Sangiovese, the 2025 Bambino Rosé, Big Fred's Red, the 2025 Concerto, and the Paradiso. Now, my favorite by far was the Bambino Rosé at 12.5%. It was beautifully balanced, in my opinion, and very drinkable. Now, my husband likes reds. I like reds too, but a lighter red than he tends to prefer a bolder red. And whites, they have their moment for me. I love a good sangria in the summer. I love a nice crisp white with a beautiful fish, but I'm not a sit and drink bottles of wine. I love enjoying a couple of bottles of wine with our friends over dinner. And so it's hard for me to find a red that I really like. And so to find a rosé that works, because nobody ever really likes rosés, let's face it. There aren't very many people who are like white or red and they go, oh, no, I'm rosé all day. That's not a thing. But anyway, this Bambino Rosé was delicious. I picked it up, $34 a bottle. And I want to tell you a little bit about their wine club, because one of the things that I am also doing as I make my way through wine country is deciding what wine clubs I want to belong to. There are people who belong to many, many wine clubs. I am not going to be one of those people. We currently already belong to 2 wine clubs, Europa and Marshall Stewart. We love both of them, but I think the magic number is 3. I think you keep 2 in your arsenal and then you rotate a third one out annually, right? That's going to be at least my philosophy for this year. So my goal is to find a third winery to become a member of as I make my way through Wine Club. And I figure I'll know when it's the winery I'm supposed to sign up with when I'm thinking about it 2 wineries later and wondering why I didn't get that bottle of insert whatever. And so let me tell you about Renzoni's Wine Club perk benefits. So 20% off wine, first and foremost, 10% off of merchandise, food items, and in their restaurant. And we had lunch there. It was lovely. 50% off of tastings for guests, 8 complimentary tastings per month, discounts on olive oil, winemaker dinners, library wines, and events, and of course, access to a VIP tasting room. These are all really solid values if you're a local. So yesterday we went to Danza del Sol, and at Danza del Sol, Lindsay and Erica took amazing and incredible care of us. And to me, hospitality always matters. I will always walk away remembering how you treated me and how you came across more than what you served me, or if I had to wait, or any of those other things that easily can be erased with someone who is hospitable. And so we sat outside in their VIP tasting area because they're making changes. And so some of the things I learned is that they are building a 2-story facility right off of their clubhouse, and it's supposed to be completed in October of 2026. The second floor is going to be a VIP tasting room of sorts. The current tasting room will become the member tasting room. The current clubhouse will become the general public tasting room. And on the first floor of the new building, there will be a restaurant. Now, you're going to be mad at me. I forgot to ask what kind of restaurant it was. And everybody I was with is hoping it's not Italian. So if you're listening, Danza, please don't build an Italian restaurant. The Valley does not need more Italian. Anyhow, I digress. We were told all about the impending changes, and I'm very excited for them. And I got to admit, it made me really kind of want to join because it's gorgeous. Their little VIP tasting room is just this little bite of paradise that was, you can tell, designed very, very thoughtfully. You're outdoors, but you feel as though you're in a confined space with waterfalls and tables and umbrellas, and it was just really cute. And so we sat out there because it was a gorgeous day, and then we would just walk up to the tasting bar and get our next taste when we were ready. So FYI, on Danza del Sol's website, they offer a 2-for-1 tasting, and tastings during the week are $25, and you get 6 tastings. That's pretty generous. So what I tasted, well, I had their Espuma 2024, which was their sparkling. And it's always nice to start with a little palate cleanser and a sparkling. This one was delicious. Not too bubbly, not too sweet, not a tart finish. Very nice. I would definitely buy a bottle of this one. And then I tried the 2023 Vermentino. I'm sorry, the 2024 Vermentino. And I didn't really like it all that much. It was a little dry and tart for my taste. But my friend tried the 23 Vermentino and she liked it. So, who knows? Maybe it was just a little new. And then the estate, wait for it, Gewürztraminer. Hey, I asked her how to say it, and I'm pretty damn sure I got it right. I love a good Gewürztraminer, but it's very hard to find one. And I don't know how many people in the Valley make one, but if I'm being honest, this is the first one I've ever tried, and it was good. It had, I don't want to say oaky, but some sort of a woodsy feel at the back of my palate. And it wasn't sweet at all, but it was very, very delicious. I really enjoyed it. And I think that was $42 a bottle. So I did get some notes of pear, some crispy light notes. It's definitely a must try. And then I had the Estate Viognier, the 24 Viognier. And to me, it wasn't among my favorites. It was dry, a little sour for my taste buds. But that's just me. Who knows? Then I moved on. I wanted to try a few of their reds. So I had 2 tastings left. And I said, you know what? By then, another friend had joined us and she's a red drinker. And since she wasn't doing a tasting, I wanted her to help me select because I, like learning from people. And she said, well, I'm going to want to do the Petite Syrah. And I said, okay. And we'll finish with the Cab Sauv. And she said, yep, that's the move. So I went in and I talked to Erica and I said, okay, here's the move. We have 2 tastings left. And I think we want to do the Petite Syrah and the Cab. But I'm very, very curious about this 2022 Madrona you have. And she said, okay, first of all, I have to give you a splash of the Cab anyway. So even if you don't have any tastings left, you'll get to taste that. But I really think that you need to try the Madrona. So she poured me the 2022 Madrona saying, by the way, it's, and I was going to do the Tempranillo, and she said it's 85% Tempranillo and Grenache anyway. So, try it. My gosh, I really liked it. It was light. It was drinkable. I could definitely see myself enjoying a glass of this with my husband and over a nice fish dinner, because I think I said it before on the podcast, but one of the tricks I learned while we were in Europe is that if you tilt your wine glass to the side and you hold it over a light surface, like a white sheet of paper, and you can see the paper, then it's light enough to drink with fish or chicken. And I love that and it's a win. We don't have to open 2 bottles of wine. My husband and I can actually share one for dinner because it's light enough, and he'll, have a Cab with a piece of fish. He doesn't care. He loves his reds, and that's good and fine, but that doesn't really work for me. So this Madrona at $48 a bottle was a really good choice. And so then we got the 2022 Petite Syrah, and I didn't really like it. You're supposed to taste wine twice. So first sip, it was like, yike, that's really tart, tanniny, but not over tanniny, but just a little weird. It tasted immature. And then I took another sip, and it was better. And I suspected that if I would have kept sipping, it would have kept getting better. But I was sharing with my friend, and so I told her, let's reserve comment until we try this Cabernet Sauvignon. So I went back in for my promised splash of Cab, and it had a tart finish. It was definitely more full-bodied. But if I'm being honest, it was a little rough for me. And my friend took her 2 sips, and we both looked at each other and agreed that we both liked the 2022 Petite Syrah better. So that was my takeaway. I did not buy a bottle yesterday, but if I would have, it would have either been the Espumosa Sparkling or the Dry Estate Gewürztraminer, because to me, those were the 2 most delicious tastings I had. I honorable mention to the Madrona because I thought it was a really drinkable, nice blend. And so that's my segment. And I really, really am looking forward to next week's adventures. I also realized it's been a little bit since I've done a real health and wellness check-in. And so I want to bring you guys up to speed just really quickly. Right now, I mentioned before, I'm aiming for what I want to refer to as the 80-20 lifestyle. And so what that for me means, having done the math, is about 4 indulgent meals a week. And so I've rebranded cheat meal, cheat food, cheat item into indulgence because cheat has a negative connotation and I'm not doing anything wrong. This is part of my plan. So my goal is to take away all of the negative self-talk. So I'm allowing myself 4 indulgences per week. And the rest of the time, I'm trying really hard to stay focused on healthy proteins, vegetables, lots of water, lots of hydrating. And for me, this week is more about stretching, but the goal is to make it to the gym once this week. Even if I just show up, it's to make it there once this week and then to walk 3 to 4 days this week as tolerated. I have 1 under my belt, but you guys, I want to be honest. The hip is hipping. It hurts. And it's genuinely hard to stay motivated when you're in pain. It's not about pushing through. That's easy for me. I'm a trooper. I'm that girl that'll do that. What I'm struggling with is adapting, staying in a relationship with my body instead of trying to fight it. So if that's what you're going through too, you're not failing. You're just adjusting. We need to be kinder to ourselves and allow ourselves to make these adjustments. So I'll end with this. I don't think wanting less means wanting a smaller life. I think sometimes it means wanting a truer life. One where safety doesn't come from backup plans hanging in a closet. One where value isn't tied to what we can buy or get or acquire. One where we trust ourselves a little more than we used to. You know, we just give ourselves that benefit of the doubt that our gut is correct. And so, as per usual, I don't have all of this figured out, you guys, but noticing it has already changed how I am moving through my days. And I'm so proud of me. And for now, that feels like enough. So honestly, truly, I thank you so much for listening and for being here and for just living on the verge with me. It means a lot. And as always, I will be here until next time, living on the verge. Have an amazing week.